It is 9:30 a.m. on June 12, 2026. The opening bell rings at the NASDAQ exchange. A mega entity called SpaceX goes public, and in the first fraction of a second, the sheer volume of buy orders overloads the entire trading system. By the end of the day, the stock price climbs relentlessly, pushing Elon Musk past a threshold no human being has ever reached. He is worth $1 trillion. 12 zeros behind a 1 is difficult for the human mind to process. To understand the true scale of that number, we have to look at it in terms of time. This timeline shows how time scales. Step back a million seconds and you arrive 11 days ago. A billion seconds is 32 years. But 1 trillion seconds goes all the way back to 31,000 BC, long before human civilization. Accumulating a fortune of this magnitude cannot be done by working for a salary. Reaching $1 trillion requires rewriting the financial rules entirely. Long before the NASDAQ listing, Musk's reality was Pretoria, South Africa, in the 1970s. As a small, socially awkward child, he was frequently targeted by bullies. One attack was so severe it put him in the hospital for 2 weeks, forcing him to retreat inward into science fiction and code to escape the physical violence. Approaching his 17th birthday, a new threat emerged. The apartheid regime expected him to answer a mandatory military draft and pick up a rifle. Instead of serving, he packed a single bag. Using his mother's Canadian citizenship as leverage, he left the continent entirely to avoid the draft. By 1995, he had made his way to the United States and entered a PhD program at Stanford University. Seeing the internet growing at over 2,000% a year, he dropped out after just 2 days. He fled a national draft at 17 and abandoned a Stanford PhD by 24, choosing to build his own infrastructure rather than wait for permission from established ones. He started by building an online city guide called Zip2, then poured that money into an online bank that became PayPal. When eBay bought PayPal in 2002, Musk walked away with $180 million. He threw that entire payout into the notoriously brutal businesses of rocket manufacturing and electric cars. By late 2008, 3 rockets had exploded, Tesla was bleeding cash, and he was borrowing money to make rent. With just a few million left, he split the remaining funds to save both companies simultaneously. The gamble paid off when his engineers took a first-stage booster falling from space and landed it upright. That single mechanical feat dropped the cost of a space launch from $150 million down to $62 million, saving him from bankruptcy. But landing rockets and manufacturing electric vehicles only gets you so far. Selling physical products generates millions, maybe billions, but it is mathematically insufficient to hit a 13-figure valuation. To multiply his wealth exponentially, he shifted his focus. He stopped marketing current hardware and started selling investors a stake in a science fiction future. Wall Street operates on several valuation models. One is the castles in the air theory, which states a stock's price doesn't rely on revenue or profit margins, but entirely on the psychological dreams you can sell to the public. He pitched investors on 600-mile-per-hour hyperloops, promised millions of fully autonomous robotaxis within a year, and guaranteed human colonies on Mars by the mid-2020s. The deadlines passed without delivery, but the stock prices climbed anyway. This chart shows how disconnected the valuation became from reality. While the stock price aggressively climbed based on those promises, the plummeting red line shows actual corporate profits. In 2025 alone, SpaceX recorded a loss of $5 billion. Major financial analysts like Steve Eisman pointed out that this behavior is unheard of for a serious company. Investors were ignoring massive annual losses to participate in a financial cult tied entirely to the belief in one man's brand. The massive numbers inflating his net worth aren't liquid cash. It is paper wealth, a mathematical illusion that only survives as long as the market remains hyped. Out of $1 trillion, this microscopic sliver represents his actual liquid cash, just 0.1%. To turn paper into money, he uses buy, borrow, die. Instead of selling shares and triggering tax, he locks them as collateral, receiving continuous tax-free cash. By refusing a traditional salary and never selling his stock, he generates zero taxable income. The banks look at the inflated paper value of his companies and offer him massive low-interest loans. He gets hundreds of millions to spend without paying the income tax rates required of the working class. But running an empire entirely on leveraged stock makes him highly vulnerable. If the market shifts or government regulators intervene, the entire structure risks collapse. By late 2024, that exact threat materialized. Federal agencies were actively blocking his rocket launches, and 40 active lawsuits were circling his businesses, threatening to topple his highly leveraged empire. To protect his assets, he stepped out of the engineering lab and entered politics. He donated $290 million to Donald Trump's presidential campaign, becoming the administration's most visible financial backer. The return on that investment was immediate. Once the new administration took over, the federal lawsuits vanished. New FCC rulings quickly followed, granting his company Starlink monopoly control over thousands of new low-Earth satellite orbits, while his competitors faced sudden investigations. He was granted access to state visits and cabinet meetings. By securing a seat at the table, he effectively overrode the regulatory bodies that were designed to oversee his companies just months prior. This brings us back to June 2026, just days before the massive SpaceX IPO. The administration delivered one final crucial favor to ensure the stock launch succeeded. Under standard rules, the NASDAQ 100 requires new companies to wait months before being added to the index, a cooling-off period designed to protect retirement savings from overvalued IPOs. At the administration's request, that window was collapsed into a 15-day fast entry exception. This compressed timeline forced index-tracking pension and retirement funds to buy in on the first day of trading. Billions of dollars in public savings were funneled into the stock before the market had time to settle or scrutinize the company's $5 billion losses. The trillion-dollar milestone confirms the total integration of Musk's corporate interests into the American state. This wealth is the end result of a decade spent neutralizing regulators and rewriting financial safety rules until the system itself was engineered to facilitate his ascent.